If the reviser can just step us onto actions that we have taken so far.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So here's the list of agreements that I have so far. The first agreement with regard to Senate Bill 83 was to remove the 1A and 2A high school 4-year enrollment count from the bill. The second was to remove the teacher pay raises that were included in the bill. The third was to insert the new provisions that are codifying the KEEP Act. The fourth was to make revisions to special education services aid with regard to providing federal funding for that aid through appropriation and transfer from the KEEP program of $47 million, and then the rest of the $72 million enhancement from the LCC's ARPA related monies. And then the fifth agreement, the last agreement that I have is regarding the special education task force that's created through a proviso. And there was agreement to add an 11th member to the task force from a tiny K program. But I believe, Madam Chair, you wish to see some language on that, and I do have that language available.
If we could please pass that out, that would be helpful. So that's the language to add the tiny K representation, one member be appointed by the State Department of Education. It does clarify that they are a professional in early childhood developmental services and that they provide services for the tiny K program, and it increases the membership of the committee to 11. Committee, is there any question or concern about the contents of this amendment? So we do have agreement on that language, and so we can mark that as, that would be the 7th that we, is that, wait, 2, 4, that would be the 5th that we have finalized as far as agreement. Okay. So at this point in time, House members, do you have any language that you would like to bring to us?
Yes, Madam Chair. There are 2 items I'd like to offer from the House. One item is to add back the language provided in Senate Bill 83, the House substitute for Senate Bill 83 that was excluded. And this is the protective language that was found on page 17, section 16, and it deals with compulsory attendance. What it does is separate our existing homeschool students with students that might participate in the KEEP program so that they are uniquely distinct. And those that are in the KEEP program are already, per the bill, not required to register as a homeschool. However, this is just one more addition for safekeeping. Nick, would you pass that language out, or no language? It's just 6 page. It's there. The language is identical to what is found in what we passed off the floor. It is page 16, and no, it is page 17, 16 section. And I do have another request offer after we look at that one. Or I can do both.
Why don't you give us a minute to look at that? So Nick, as a revisor, we're looking at line 17. Is it line 17 through 24?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this would be inserting on page 17, line 17, like you are seeing, the amendment to KSA 723120. The amendments to that current statute appear and go through page 20 of the bill. And then the amendments you would see on, specifically on page 18, there's a new subsection C. And then on page 20, there's a new paragraph 3 of a new subsection J down there.
Okay. So I think we have that. What else did you have to offer?
All right, our second item, upon discussion about school closures in rural Kansas, especially when those school closures include small cities, small communities in which there's one singular district, and how in those cases, it's come to our attention that you can, through the low enrollment weighting, move, for example, the count from 1.65 per student to 2.1 or 2.2 per student. And so it can be, in some circumstances, an advantage to lose students. We do not want to discourage schools from moving in the most efficient manner as possible, so this is not about that. But what this does say is if your school is closed, those students are abandoned, and you do not have an attendance center within 5 miles, then you would be eligible for a KEEP grant. So it is only for those facilities or enrollment centers in which you do not have another option within 5 miles. And Nick, if you'll pass that language out.
So as a point of clarification, the individual student would they have to fulfill the household income of 250%, or they would not have to?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the 250% income threshold would be one qualification criteria. This would provide another qualification criteria, as Chair Williams stated, that if a student attended a school building in a school district in the preceding year that has since been closed by the school district, and that student is required to travel 5 miles or more to their newly assigned school, they would qualify for a KEEP program grant under this bill.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And kind of to explain this a little bit further, in communities where you have a school district and it's in the same city, it's generally, this is not what we're looking at, those situations. For example, in Augusta, an elementary school was closed. There are 3 other elementary schools in that city. And so those students have the opportunity to move to any of those other 3 attendance centers. So it's really about those impacting, especially rural areas where they have no easy alternatives. And they're going to have to drive a distance. And a school is sitting unoccupied and unused, such as what has recently transpired in Wilson. And so this seems like a fair opportunity for those students that have been abandoned, really, without good options. So thank you.
Committee members, are there any other additional questions? I'm not certain on the 5 miles. I'm trying to think through some communities. But again, it's obviously beyond what the state provides funding for transportation, 5 miles. So why don't you let us talk briefly and we'll get right back. Okay, so we do have 2 discussion items, and I'll start by calling on Senator Sykes. And this is on the first portion of the ask.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So, is that on? Okay. So in section 16, it would be on page 18, section C. Can you clarify the language of your proposed amendment? Because currently it's participating in the Sunflower Education Program. So would that change it? And then would it be for those who receive the $1,000 award and the $5,000 grant? Or can you get clarification there?
So no, it would be for KEEP. It would be updated for this, the changes that we have offered. Compulsory attendance is required for public school students. It's required for private school students. The reason that this is separated out is simply because they are requested from the homeschool legal defense that the homeschool students be distinctly different from those that would receive funding through this program, KEEP.
Clarification then. So I think with the language in section C, it's saying a child that is a qualified student participating in the Sunflower Education, which you're saying this would be changed to KEEP program pursuant to section 2, shall be deemed to meet requirements of this section. So if the child is 16 or 17, they are exempt from that compulsory attendance.
Yes, so currently, right now, the compulsory attendance requires that 1,116 hours that you have to be in school and you have to provide, that verification that you are in school. This, when you're doing a variety of different types of schools, it may not be exactly 1,116 hours. It could be more, it could be less. It depends on the learning needs of the student.
So I guess I'm still concerned because at the beginning of section 16, it's amended to read that subject to other provisions of this section. And then when I read section C, if you are participating in the KEEP, you are deemed to meet the requirements. So that would be any student who gets an award or a grant would be a KEEP program, and therefore they could meet their compulsory attendance and not required to attend.
If the wording included KEEP grants, it would be different than KEEP awards. So they are easily identifiable in the bill. Awards are 1,000 and grants are the base aid.
Okay, follow up again. So
Follow up.
So if they are a recipient of a KEEP award, so the $5,000 grant, I think according to section C, they would meet requirements for attendance.
Yes, they would.
So even if they do not attend, as long as they are an awardee.
So this program, KEEP, would be overseen and administered by the state treasurer. There are going to be requirements for you to be a qualified service provider. And if that qualified service provider did not provide the service that they say that they were going to provide, it would be fraud.
I'll have to look at the service provider definition to qualify, but I still think there is concern that if you are receiving this, that would give you qualification that you have met your eligibility for compulsory attendance, regardless of attending.
Representative Williams.
Thank you. And only one final note on that. When we have any type of school outside of public school, there is not that same type of accountability or in terms of the 1,116 hours. Somebody that homeschools is not turning in a report that says we met 1,116 hours. What we do know is that even without this accountability, those students that go on and go and try to go to University of Kansas, the average ACT score is 26. So they're exceeding what our public schools do without that accountability of that 1,116 hours. So there's got to be a way to provide this flexibility for parents, that we're entrusting them with the ability to provide the best and most flexible type of education that meets the unique needs of the students. And so there is that distinction.
Senator Sykes.
Well, as I look at the definition for qualified service provider, it just approved to a qualified education service provider. It doesn't say anything out. And then as you look further in the bill, there is no looking at curriculum. There is no accountability here. So I, again, think we are opening up a door, whether it's on purpose or not on purpose.
Representative Williams.
Okay, in terms of looking at curriculum, absolutely. The state treasurer, even though the state treasurer would have rules and regulatory authority, that would not be his domain. The Kansas legislature does not look at public school curriculum. So we may have passed legislation for fiscal courses or computer literacy, but by no means do we go into a local school board and say you have to provide X, Y, and Z type of curriculum. And so this would not do that either. The same is true for homeschool or for any type of private school. They may be accredited or non-accredited. They may be through the state accreditation process or another type of accreditation process. But it is our intent to provide that educational freedom that would allow for the best type of education for the variety of needs that exist for our Kansas students.
Senator Sykes, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I think we are tying our hands. We are giving them state dollars, and we are not going to have any accountability whether or not they are receiving the education that we are hoping that they do or not. I still trying to find the provision in there, but again, I think we are setting our students up for what they think is going to be possibly a better alternative for them, but there is no accountability in this. We can't even look at curriculum to see what they are. There's no, honestly, just no accountability.
Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One, I think there's been a lot of discussion in education about the seed hours and moving away from that to mastery of content. So I think everyone's trying to kind of move away from just, you know, it doesn't matter how many hours you're sitting there, are you able to master content? So I think even public schools are looking at ways to recognize that and let children move at their own pace. Some master sooner than others. And this, you know, all in the same row, facing forward, learning at the same time. We know that doesn't work for every child. So I think we can all agree that the seat time really is I think, an antiquated way to measure. As far as accountability, the ultimate accountability is with the parent. And either we trust the parent, you know, we say we want parent involvement in public school. Either we trust parents, and I'm more concerned about accountability for outcomes, not inputs. So I'm very comfortable with the way that this is worded. Thank you, Madam Chair.
For those of us old school, when we talk about seat time, we're talking about Carnegie hours, and Carnegie hours have changed over the years. That is why we have snow days, and at times the State Board of Education has been called upon to reduce the number of Carnegie hours that are required for graduation. I will remind those listening, those attending, that the State Board has taken other action as well, reducing the number of credits a high school student must have to graduate, dropping it as low as 21 credits as opposed to 28. So we also know that, you know, high school students, we have, for most of our technical colleges, high school students make up 50% of their enrollment. For community colleges, the average throughout the state is 20%, and many of those students are studying at that location as opposed to in the high school classroom. So there is travel time, but there's also kind of that, not the lacking of that direct supervision of what's going on by the school districts as they move on. Some of them even do the work study. I would like us to move forward on, unless, and I guess we could keep open if Senator Sykes wants to bring language for change. That would be something that would be appropriate. But I would like us to move on to the other item that you had given to us, and that is with regard to the Bloom Amendment. And our concern is the 5 miles, and our counter is that that be increased to 15 miles.
Question, Chair. Do we know in the specific case of Wilson, not to make this parochial about one particular community, there are other communities, and we've heard of others that are looking to close schools, but do we know the distance of the closest attendance center for Wilson?
It's my understanding that that's right at about 30 miles.
"15 miles is acceptable with the House."
So I think if we can go ahead and mark that off, the 15 miles is acceptable. At this time, I'm believing we're needing to stop because the next committee is coming in. So we do need to set a time. And so I think that part of what we need to know from the reviser standpoint, is there a time frame that some of potential amendments that have been requested of you, is there a time frame that you think they will be more readily available? Do we have some amendments, even looking at Senate Bill 113, that we could address in the short term? And what do you have as far as availability? And I'm going to look to my right as well as to my left. So we'll start, Senator Sykes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question on one of the provisions in 113 with the mental health program. Some of the schools in our districts outsource, so it's not the community health center who's doing that work. So would like clarification, since that was on the House provision, but knowing that could be a concern in my school districts.
Okay. So just so we know that when we come back, that would be an issue of concern. CMHCs as opposed to community health centers and so forth. But Senator Sykes and Senator Erickson, so you have a 3 o'clock and a 4 o'clock. What do you have? Just education. So what available do you have? We're back at 2 also. Okay. Are you available at 1? You're at 1 and 3.
Taking all of our slots.
Okay. So your meeting at 4. How long do you think? Let's try for 4:30. Are you available at 4:30? You go. Okay, so we will be addressing Senate Bill 83, Senate Bill 113. We are going to add on to that House Bill 2060. And we agreed at 4:30, is that right? Okay, we will see you then. Thank you.